one time. Go grab your guns. I'll tell you one time. This ain't philosophy. Why?
Oh, you know I had to bring back Jimmy's intro. I had to. Hello, and welcome to The War Room. Israeli Special, actually, Episode 2. I had to put that intro together very quickly. I did not think that I was going to do a second episode, to be perfectly honest. I thought this was going to be a one and done. I really thought that the U.S. would pressure the UN, or the UN would pressure NATO, or somebody would pressure somebody to basically tell Israel and Hamas, hey, fucking stop. Stop shooting. Stop it. But they didn't, did they? No. On the contrary. Actually, the entire world got behind Israel in a way. And even our own president was like, they should not show restraint. They were attacked. They should fight back. For once, I'm in complete agreement with the President of the United States. Did not expect him to say that. And I thought, wow, he stood for something amazing. Or his handlers did. Whatever. There's a theory on that. Anyway, we have a lot to cover, and I'm going to just drag him in here now. So, my co-host, one Mikhail Neitstritsky. Good evening to you, sir.
Yeah, but by the way, Scott's angry that you don't include him anymore.
Does he want in?
He wants in. He says he shouldn't have to fucking ask for it, is what he said.
Jesus Christ. One butthurt Scott. I told you last episode if you wanted in, just PM me, because I wasn't sure if you wanted in or not, but here you are. So, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
So anyway, we've got a bit to cover. Let me just give you a quick synopsis. Today we're going to what?
Hold up. Before we go over that, we need to have we need to have like some commentary in the middle of the show, okay? Because before we've gone through all the news. Yeah. The problem is we don't have any commentary or anything, or a short break in the middle of it to catch our breath, and I think we need that.
So you want it to be 3 hours long?
No, he's saying he needs a bathroom break.
Oh, yes. He doesn't have like a bucket in front of him.
No, I don't do that. I'm not nasty.
Dang, 2-liter bottle.
I don't do that either.
Pickle jar?
No.
You never did the pickle jar on a road trip as a kid?
Powerade bottle.
Like your dad was like, I'm not stopping this car, pee in the jar.
No. If anything, we actually had the actual thing that's meant for that kind of thing.
A litter box?
No, at hospitals use them. They're
bedpan in the car?
The Shiwi?
No, it was the plastic urinal.
If Mike had a Shiwi, then we're gonna have a discussion about his gender. I heard you say Shiwi.
You said Shiwi. Okay.
Man.
Anyways, keep going.
Shiwis are just female people from New Zealand. Shiwis. Anyway.
All right, I'm glad we properly derailed. Continue.
Yes. Okay, so today is Friday the 13th. I was born on Friday the 13th, but I'm celebrating a birthday for 2 girls and a boy today. So my dog Evie and her brother Tony, they both have birthdays today. They both turned 4. And then the not girlfriend, she has a birthday today too. And we've been talking back and forth all day. So happy birthday to all 3 of them.
Well, unlike you, at least you don't have Michael Jackson and John McCain's birthday like I do.
No, I have. I went through the whole list before. Like I always say, Baron Davis, but there's a bunch of people actually. Ron Perlman, he's on my birthday list.
Not many people on my birthday.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway.
Oh, actually, the guy who played the lead character in Das Boot, the TV series that I just finished watching, he has the same birthday I do too.
You mean the one who just passed away?
No.
The other one.
He's a German actor. He's the same age as Gavin. They're both born in '89, but he's got the same birthday I do, so I thought it was kind of cool. Anyway, all right. So enough tangenting aside. Today we're going to update you on the ongoing conflict in Israel against Hamas terrorists. For those of you who didn't know,
TLDR, it's a shit show.
Yep. For those of you who didn't know, a second carrier strike group was called up. It's the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower carrier group that left Norfolk, Virginia 2 days ago. And they're not going to run at a flank bell. They're not in a hurry. So it'll probably take them somewhere between 10 to 14 days to get on station. This is not necessarily a prelude to intervention or war. This was a planned movement, just a little bit ahead of schedule. So the same thing happened when the Gerald R. Ford got pushed out. They sent it out. It was supposed to go later, but they sent it earlier. Same type of thing, but there will be an overlap. So technically, if you are on the Gaza Strip, or if you are from Hezbollah and you're looking out towards the Eastern Mediterranean, you will have the fear of God put into you when you see 2 carrier strike groups right off your coast. That's a lot of boom. You do not want to poke that bear.
They kind of already did.
A bit. So that's been going on. Russian leader Vladimir Putin somehow found the time to lay blame of this conflict on the U.S. while categorically losing his own fight. I believe the comic headline today was, "Shut up and win your war first." Yeah, there's that one. With the continued fighting in Ukraine, Syria, and now Israel, plus hostile nations such as Iran, North Korea, and the aggressive moves of China near Taiwan, we're going to ask the question, is the world at war? I mean, we all see it, right? Like, there are multiple belligerents. They have chosen sides. They have opined where they stand. And there's a lot of hardware being moved. And a fight broke out in a small country that isn't really big in the news usually, kind of like what happened in Yugoslavia to start off World War I, or kind of like Poland when Germany decided to take an extended holiday in 1939. This is the same kind of thing. And last week we said we thought it was Ukraine, but now here we are watching Israel, which we're going to update you on this. They're fighting a 2-front war now. Bit strange, but it's happening. We have a friend who lives in the northern part of the country, and he's been very diligent on his social media trying to give updates. If you're a religious type, pray for his safety, because our boy Amit is fighting in outdated gear without his tank. And that's kind of scary.
They took his tank away from him?
Well, it got phased out.
Oh my God.
So
that means
what
he's
else?
old.
Oh,
That's bullshit.
I think it was a Centurion X or a Conqueror, but whatever. Anyway, We're going to address these issues and obviously many more, and possibly end the show with a what-if scenario if we have time. The other information you probably need to know is why the world has such a vested interest in this. Because people from all over the world are dying there. To give you an idea what's going on, 27 Americans are confirmed dead as of today. 17 British are confirmed dead as of today. 13 French nationals are dead as of today. And, bizarrely, the one German that I put in the intro last week, or earlier this week, that I thought had died, survived and is recovering in a hospital in Tel Aviv. So 0 German nationals, as far as I know. Let's see. The finest of apes say the task force cannot bend on flank speed. We decommissioned all of our nuclear-powered cruisers and destroyers years ago, and an unescorted carrier is just a big duck. That's true. There was a satellite view of the not the Eisenhower, the Gerald R. Ford carrier group, and the wake that they were pushing suggests that they were all ahead full or slightly faster. Like, they were booking it. They were absolutely caning it to get there, which is kind of neat, actually. But they're on station now. And they brought 4 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers with them. That's 360 Tomahawk missiles. That's a lot of boom. That's a lot of boom. We're not even at the F-35s and the F-18s. We haven't even touched that yet, but they're on there too. So.
The funniest thing is those carrier battle groups don't go anywhere without replenishment ships.
Oh yeah, there's tenders there for sure, and you have to wonder if maybe there's
one carrying a buttload of missiles.
Well, no, I was thinking of was it the Virginia class?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to wonder if maybe there's 1 or 2 of those in the area too.
There's always 2 nuclear subs assigned to a carrier battle group.
Okay, good to know. So I don't think it's a Seawolf, but if it was, God help them.
They're Seawolves are too specialized.
Well, I mean, with as much boom as they carry, God help them if they actually have one of those on station.
There's also only 2 of them that are able to go to sea right now.
Well, yeah, because somebody decided to, bump one into
an underground mountain.
Yeah. Oops. All right, so a couple of fast facts about what's going on if you were living under a rock or unaware. Israel has officially declared war against Hamas after the terrorist group had infiltrated their country last Saturday, firing over 5,000 rockets, their dumbfire weapons, into residential areas and killing their civilian population. As of today, the estimate is about 2,800 people on all sides have been killed in this conflict, including 1,300 Israeli civilians and soldiers, and 27 Americans, as I said earlier. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pledged yesterday, it would have been this morning for them, but yesterday, to defeat Hamas and, quote, wipe them off the face of the earth, in a speech during his swearing in of the National Emergency Unity Government at the, is it Knesset? I don't know if the K is silent. I've never looked into that. According to Israeli reports, at least 1,500 Hamas terrorists were killed in Israel. They estimate that hundreds of terrorists among them are dead in Gaza, which I think I have numbers for that in one of the stories tonight. Let's see. I guess without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into the stories of the day. They're all shorter stories compared to typical war rooms, so I've got a lot of them, but we'll get through them fairly quickly because they're pretty short.
If you need to, paraphrase them, because we don't need to go through...
No, they're short.
Okay.
They're short.
If you need to paraphrase.
Today we're starting with Antony Blinken.
Oh, goody.
Yeah. Secretary of State Antony Blinken reacted to images of, quote, murdered and burned babies released by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office, which purported to show the atrocities committed by Hamas. I don't know if you guys saw this morning, but there's a journalist, his name is Lawrence Jones, and he was at a university in New York today, basically interviewing pro-Palestinian protesters. And he literally walked up to this girl who was just cowing away, and he said, "So you're okay with Hamas terrorists cutting off the heads of infants and shooting them and burning the bodies?" And this girl flat out, she was like, "That is false. That is absolutely false." Like, I'm sorry, did you see the pictures? Now,
Yeah,
to his
pictures don't
credit,
lie.
or to his detriment, he should have had the pictures on his phone ready to go. I did manage to find a few. I cannot show them on YouTube because we would get struck down immediately, but it's pretty gruesome. So anyway,
Supposedly Ben Shapiro
yeah,
showed one,
yeah.
but somebody tried fact checking it, saying it was AI generated.
Oh, some bullshit, man.
I would think Ben Shapiro probably would have checked
Yeah.
its source first before
Yeah.
publishing it.
So we did see photographs, videos that the Israeli government shared with us. Some I think has actually been seen in public media. This is Antony Blinken saying this. Others were new to me, and I think new to our team, Blinken said at a press conference in Israel. It's hard to find the right words, he continues. It's beyond what anyone would ever want to imagine, much less actually see and, God forbid, experience. A baby, an infant, riddled with bullets, soldiers beheaded, young people burned alive in their cars and in their hideaway rooms. I could go on, but it's simply depravity in the worst imaginable way. It almost defies comprehension. For those of you who don't know, Hamas was aware that the hideaway rooms that Israelis have in their bunkers have no door locks. So they literally just walked into these without any resistance and slaughtered people in them, knowing that they couldn't barricade the doors. I don't know why they set it
That
up that way.
seems like a tactical flaw.
Yeah, I don't know why they even set it up that way. Like, why would they do that? Anyway, and as I've been saying, to me, in the most immediate future, harkens back to ISIS and some of the very things we saw when it was on its rampage and thankfully was stopped. So I think for any human being to see this, it's really beyond almost anything that we can comprehend or digest. And I'll just add, this is Blinken's quote, by the way. And I'll just add that when you do see this, you try to imagine, well, maybe not try, but can't help but imagine yourself or your family or your loved ones or your friends in that situation or in that predicament. And maybe the best word for it for me is overwhelming. I think what it's done is, as I said, united a country in profound grief, but also united a country in resolve. And it's imperative that the rest of us share that resolve. I said this earlier, this is a moment for moral clarity. This is a moment where everyone needs to make clear that there is revulsion, disgust, and a determination not to allow this to go any further forward. So, images are worth 1,000 words. These images are worth millions. It's a pretty powerful message. Antony Blinken always comes off a bit weak to me, but this was a good statement, I think, from him. He was visibly shaken when he did this.
Yeah, he was.
So it's hard to fake that kind of emotion, I think, especially for a guy like him, because he has no poker face. So I'm guessing you're talking about the change that Israelis are getting now, where they're trying to relax the gun laws in their country so the citizens can be better armed. It's very tragic that it took this to finally get that figured out. While in our own country, they're still trying to strip us of our fundamental rights every damn day.
And it's trying to support Hamas and Palestine.
Right. All right, moving on.
Just makes sense.
So this here is the United Kingdom has deployed 2 Royal Navy ships and surveillance aircraft to the Eastern Mediterranean to support Israel and to reinforce regional stability, the officer of British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said yesterday. The military package includes P-8 surveillance planes, other surveillance assets, 2 auxiliary ships, 3 Merlin helicopters, and a company of Royal Marines. British forces will be on standby to, quote, deliver practical support to Israel and its partners in the region and offer deterrence and assurance, Downing Street was quoted as saying. We must be unequivocal in making sure these type of horrific scenes we have seen this week will not be repeated, Sunak said in his statement. Along our allies, the deployment of our world-class military will support efforts to ensure regional stability and prevent further escalation. Sunak also spoke to Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to understand the wider regional picture and underscore the importance of supporting civilians to leave Gaza. Now, Gavin and I watch a lot of boxing, and we watch a lot of mixed martial arts pay-per-views. And a lot of them come out of DAZN, which is British owned. And I've got to tell you, ever since this started, the Royal Marines, the Royal Navy, the recruitment videos during these fights have skyrocketed. Probably because they were anticipating this. But I don't know. We'll see if they actually get any extra numbers from it. Anyway, moving on. We're going to talk a lot about domestic response too. And strangely enough, New York comes into the story today 3 times. At least 3 times. Yeah. So here's the first one. New York Police Department on Thursday said it has surged resources at sensitive locations around the city amid the war unfolding in Israel. NYPD's Intelligence and Counterterrorism Bureau deploys a wide array of resources to protect the city based on events unfolding here and around the world. This includes high-visibility sources like the Critical Response Command and counterterrorism officers, as well as our intelligence division's personnel. Local media outlets reported that the NYPD is planning to show a force today, Friday, and has instructed all members to report in uniform and has canceled all vacations and leaves over the possibility of civil unrest. Gee, I wonder why there would be civil unrest in New York.
Who knew?
Clashes and tense confrontations broke out earlier this week during pro-Palestinian protests in Manhattan between groups supporting Palestine and Israel. Demonstrators at the rally burned and stomped on an Israeli flag and taunted Israeli supporters with an image of a swastika. Now, remember, it's those people who usually call everyone else Nazis. Others exhibited signs that read, Palestinian returns by any means necessary, Israeli apartheid and genocide funded by the U.S., and end all U.S. aid to Israel. At least one pro-Palestinian protest scheduled for Friday was moved to Thursday in Brooklyn, according to an Instagram post from its organizers. Don't you find it really funny that these people who are protesting in the United States, exercising their constitutional right to free speech, assembly, and expression, are demonizing the very country that they're doing the protest in?
Actually, you know what's even funnier?
Hmm.
All the trans and gay people that are supporting them, when in Palestine, they'd be thrown off the top of buildings.
You know,
That's true.
we talked about this Monday a little bit, and I think it was 1939. Germany put out an order, an issue through all diplomatic channels. It went into newspapers all over the world, and it was called Heimenreich. And basically what they said is the fatherland needs you. We're calling on all German nationals to come back to the fatherland and fight for it. At least those people, when they protested being pro-German, they put their money where their mouth was. They got off their ass and they went back to the fatherland and fought for it. Now, granted, they were on the wrong side of this, clearly, right? But if you hear these pro-Palestinian people and harpies in universities screaming at everybody that passes by, you have to kind of just wonder, why don't you get on a plane and go fight for what you're believing in right now? Why don't you put your money where your mouth is? Oh, that's right, Mia Khalifa. If you want to jump back onto a plane to Lebanon, they would publicly stone you for doing porn, wouldn't they?
Yeah, well, you heard she got fired from the job she was working, right?
She got kicked out of the Playboy Content Creators Union, yes. She had all of her content removed. She got
was
kicked off of
working with
ESPN
some
a while
Canadian
back.
guy.
Yeah, she's done for a while. She's done. She's got to disappear for a while. Like she's not getting a job for a while. Unless she's going back to the one that made her famous in the first place. Which again, she would be
She
publicly
claims she
stoned and
didn't make
executed.
claims she didn't make money off of.
Right. Yeah. Most downloaded, viewed person on Pornhub didn't make a dime. Bullshit. Moving on. Before we get into a porn discussion.
I think we already did.
No, not gonna do it. All right, here we go. This guy here. The
It was
FBI
quick.
said that. Oh wait, did I pass a story up? I might have done that. I did. I'm sorry. Let me go back to this one here. Here we go. The U.S. and Qatar have a quiet agreement to block Iran from accessing the $6 billion in humanitarian aid amid Hamas's terror attacks on Israel. Sources familiar with the meeting between Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo and House Democrats said that Adeyemo told the lawmakers that the United States has a quiet agreement with Qatar not to move any of the $6 billion in unfrozen money to Iran for an indefinite period. The release of $6 billion in Iranian funds stems from a Biden administration deal with Tehran as a part of a prisoner swap. As part of the deal, Iran released 5 Americans being detained, and the U.S. released 5 Iranian citizens being held in the U.S. The unfreezing of the funds occurred nearly a month before Hamas launched this attack on Israel starting last weekend. Biden administration said that the money can only be used for, quote, humanitarian needs like food and medicine. That was the prelude to the deal, right? The precursor to the deal. The problem is, and we discussed this Monday, they can spend the money any way they want. They can just bullshit us. So what they did is they're not broke. Iran's not broke. They sell oil to our enemies everywhere. They've got money in the coffers. So if they bankrolled Hamas in Gaza, they'll just backfill that expenditure with this $6 billion. So it doesn't look like they spent the money directly. But we're not stupid. It's a shell game. Well, those assets have been refrozen. So supposedly, not a cent is going out. With that
Supposedly.
sort of... Right, allegedly.
Allegedly.
So what that looks like to me is somebody... I think I mentioned this earlier too. Somebody who knows payday is tomorrow and blows every cent left in their account the night before. If Iran did that, boy, they're probably sweating bullets right now going, oh shit, we're not getting the money to backfill this. Possibly. Hard to say. All right, now I'll go on to the story of this guy. The FBI said it was working with law enforcement across the country in response to a call by former Hamas leader Khaled Meshal for all Muslims to join the battle against Israel and to head to the streets on Friday and protest in support of Palestine. In a recorded statement sent to Reuters, Mashal is heard saying, "We must head to the squares and streets of the Arab and Islamic world on Friday." Now, to be fair, Friday in the Muslim faith is known as the Day of Prayer. So, just him saying that is not offensive. However, they rebranded it for today as the Day of Rage. So, egg on my face. Anyway, Mashal is currently based in Qatar, which I just said earlier, refroze the assets. Can we trust them?
No.
And heads Hamas's diaspora office. The FBI is aware of open source reports about calls for global action on Friday, October 13th, that may lead to demonstrations in communities throughout the United States, the FBI said Thursday. We are working closely with our law enforcement partners across the country to share information and identify and disrupt any threats that may emerge. The agency urged the public to report anything suspicious to authorities. In his statement, Mashal told Muslims that the people and government officials in Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan have a responsibility to support Palestinians, as the vast majority of Palestinian refugees call Jordan and Lebanon home. Tribes of Jordan, sons of Jordan, brothers and sisters of Jordan, this is a moment of truth, and the borders are close to you. You all know your responsibility, he said. Okay, side note here. Didn't we say something Monday, or we were told something Monday about the king of Jordan being afraid of what's going on right now because he will lose his buffer between Israel and Iraq and Iran and all that? Didn't
Apparently
somebody
he
mention
doesn't
that in
care.
the chat? And then this guy's saying that no, the people that should be uprising are in Jordan. So it's like, do we trust them? Sorry, do we trust them
Yeah,
now?
they have there are terrorists in Jordan.
Right. I mean, I'm saying we, I just meant collectively as the world or whatever. Do we trust them? Hard to say.
The government, yes. The people, no.
Kingdom?
Yeah.
We trust them?
I trust the government. I don't trust the people. The
But
King of Jordan's actually a U.S. educated guy and went through U.S. military training.
The leader of North Korea was a Swiss educated guy.
Yeah, but he's also a Kim, which means he's a psychopath.
Is that the male version of Karen?
It's literally genetic with them.
Kim's a very common surname in Korea, sir. My mother, Kim. Anyway.
What was your grandmother doing?
She owns the biggest import-export in the southern part of South Korea, which turned out to be the biggest black market in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But that was for the U.S. and South Korea's benefit, though.
Yeah, but you don't think she didn't have somebody whacked at some point?
No, she wouldn't. She wasn't that kind of business person. She just made sure things got where they needed to when they couldn't get things imported.
Hold on, I have to say it.
Stuff.
I am obligated to say it.
Yeah.
Allegedly, she wasn't.
Allegedly. I don't know. I mean, she got my mom's teeth fixed. Whatever. Anyway, moving on.
I would argue she had a vested interest in that.
This story is a little weird to me. I'm sure you guys are going to have a pretty fun opinion of this one, too. Americans looking... Well, no, you two especially. Like, I found it weird. I'm sure you're going to find it weird. Americans looking to leave Israel could be responsible for repaying the U.S. government for the cost of their transportation and would need to sign a promissory note before being allowed to leave.
It's the same bullshit. No, you think it's weird, but it's the same bullshit they tried to pull in Afghanistan, too.
Okay. The State Department said it will begin offering charter flights to Europe starting Friday, allowing talks with airlines. This is from Reuters. They said they're following talks with the airlines. Expected routes include flights from Tel Aviv to Athens. It was unclear how long the offer will last. I can confirm that the first flight out of Tel Aviv did land in Athens today. The State Department email seen by Reuters said that it plans to offer transit options beginning Friday, and that it could take some time to schedule everyone. If you choose to take this departure assistance, transportation will be by air to Athens or Frankfurt, or sea from Haifa, a Mitz town, to Cyprus, which is where Wargaming is headquartered. The email also reportedly said that Americans will be asked to sign an agreement to repay the U.S. government prior to departure, and should be prepared to arrange, you should be prepared to arrange your own lodging and onward travel from Greece, Germany, or Cyprus to your final destination. I think that part's fair. The State Department said on its website that the law requires departure assistance to private U.S. citizens or third country nationals, and to be provided on a reimbursable basis to the maximum extent practicable. By taking coordinated transportation, evacuees are obligated to repay the cost, the agency says. The amount billed to evacuees is based on the cost of a full-fare economy flight or comparable alternate transportation to a particular destination that would have been charged prior to the events requiring the evacuation. In the past, the State Department has waived these costs for evacuation flights before, as it did during the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. Funny, you just mentioned that.
See, the thing is, I mentioned it because before they weren't doing that in Afghanistan, and then later on we got reports that they were trying to institute some sort of policy like this you know, towards the end.
Yeah. So, when I read the story this morning, it kind of took me aback. I'm like, do we really have time to have people fill out paperwork when they're trying to get out of a country that they're being shelled at? Like, do we really have time for this shit? That was my first thought, right? But then I thought about it. And I was like, how many people go to the doctor's office knowing that they're not going to pay the bill in this country? Like, it's a common thing. How is this going to be any different? Anyway. Moving on. This segment that I'm leading into, I wrote a side note. It says, and what about these global pro-Palestinian protests that seemingly go unchecked? Au contraire, mon frère. Because I have this for you. France has ordered local authorities to ban all pro-Palestinian protests to protect Jews following anti-Semitic acts amid the war between Israel and Hamas. In a televised address, French President Emmanuel Macron urged the French public to not let the war erupt into tensions at home. Let us not bring ideological adventures here to France. By imitation or by projection, let us not add national fractures to international fractures, Macron says. Let's just stay united. Just before his speech, police in Paris used tear gas and water cannons to disperse pro-Palestinian demonstrators who defied the ban on such gatherings Thursday night. Macron also said that 13 French citizens at that time had been killed in Israel. That number is now 17. And another 17 are missing. The French government has reported 24 arrests for more than 100 anti-Semitic acts in France since Hamas attacked Israel last Saturday, including verbal abuse, people caught with knives near Jewish schools and synagogues, and a drone equipped with a camera spotted over the Jewish Cultural Center. More than 2,000 cases of anti-Semitic speech have been reported to an online watchdog force. Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin said a directive to local authorities on Thursday calling for a further tightening of security around Jewish schools, synagogues, and other sites. It is said pro-Palestinian demonstrations should be banned, and those who defy the bans should be arrested because they're susceptible to disrupting public order. Good on you, France, for putting your foot down. Moving on to the next New York story. So, New York Police Department yesterday said that there were no specific or credible threats to the city amid the safety concerns as the war in Israel and Hamas escalates. We're aware of the concern that postings have been circulating online and have caused us to have increased our uniform deployments and at large gatherings and cultural sites to ensure public safety out of an abundance of caution. Now, to be fair, New York City is not the only place that did this. It also happened in Chicago, Miami, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and about 5 or 6 other major cities. So this isn't just centric to New York. It's just a lot of the stories that are being published about what people are doing about this is in New York. Let's see. Authorities are ramping up security in anticipation of the pro-Palestinian rallies in the city on Friday. One such rally is slated to be gathered in Times Square. Gatherings come after former Hamas leader Khaled Mashal called for protests against Israel across the Muslim world on Friday. Supporters of Israel and backers of the Palestinians have already clashed at protests held in several American cities. NYPD said that its critical response and counterterrorism commands ready to be deployed. It has also told all police officers, be ready and report in uniform. That almost makes me wonder if some cops actually show up to work hungover and dressed like John McClane in a wife beater. To have to actually say, show up in uniform. You got any aspirin? I got a really bad headache. Keep the bottle. All right, moving on. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pledged to defeat Hamas and wipe them off the face of the earth in a speech during his swearing in of the National Emergency Unity Government at the Knesset. While praising Israeli forces and military reservists, some of whom have traveled thousands of miles to report for duty, Netanyahu likened the Hamas terrorist group to the Nazis. Another violation of, what was that thing called? Oh, I forgot the name of it now. I'll mention it later. Today we are facing the same enemy, he says. If they could, they would murder all of us. We will find these accursed murderers, these human beasts, with full force, and we will defeat them. We will wipe them off the face of the earth, he added. He further pledged to rebuild the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip, where the group has launched numerous rocket attacks at Israel over the years. The Israeli Defense Forces has bombarded Gaza with airstrikes following the unprecedented attack by Hamas by air, land, and sea last weekend. Since then, Israel has declared war on the terror group and has continued to target Hamas positions. During his remarks, Netanyahu also criticized calls by some for Israel to engage in peace talks with Hamas despite the group having targeted Israeli civilians, even children and the elderly. Hamas is ISIS, and the world that was outraged by ISIS and Al-Qaeda after 9/11 formed an international coalition to eliminate this blight, he says. Nobody said, let's meet with the representatives of ISIS or Al-Qaeda. Nobody said, let's give them an office in our country. Therefore, I said today, there is no such office, and if there are countries that maintain their presence, get rid of them. Vomit them out of the countries of the world, he added. Vomit them out. Whoever does not do this, sanction them. That's a pretty good message. So, moving on. New York is in the news for a third time. I promise, I think this is the last time.
How many times? Jesus.
3 times, I told you. New York City officials are increasing the police presence despite no specific or credible threats after Hamas leadership called for the global Day of Jihad today, Friday. A surge of uniformed police officers will be spread throughout the city at places like public, private, and religious schools, houses of worship, and in Jewish neighborhoods. In preparations for protests expected on Friday, New York Governor Kathy Hochul has activated the state's Homeland Security, Counterterrorism Unit, Hate Crimes Task Force, and state police, adding she was ready to activate the National Guard if necessary. National Guard members will patrol mass transit areas in conjunction with the MTA. Those who seek to use Hamas's violence justification for violence of their own, we have no tolerance for your level of hate, Hochul says. I condemn violence of every kind in New York, and I want to be clear, when I say every kind, that's exactly what I mean. Pro-Palestinian supporters clashed with pro-Israeli demonstrators in New York City earlier this week, as well as other American cities. On Thursday, the FBI said that it was also taking steps to ensure the safety of Americans, and said it is aware will be monitoring Friday's global action. Promise, that was the last New York story. Moving on. Scott, your
Thank God.
TV's picking up a bit, I think. Alright, so here's a Merkava for you. Israel has warned the 1.1 million people living in the north of Gaza to evacuate the area within 24 hours as a humanitarian step to minimize civilian casualties ahead of the military's response to Hamas's terrorist attacks. This was issued sometime last night, and they gave him a 24-hour notice. This story actually broke for me this morning, which is why it might sound like news that have already happened, which is true. Israeli Defense Forces spokesman Jonathan Conricus shared the message sent to citizens in Gaza on X, formerly Twitter, Friday morning. The IDF calls for the evacuation of all civilians from Gaza City from their homes southwards for their own safety and protection, and to move to the area south of the Wadi Gaza, the river Gaza, as shown on the map, Conricus said. He explained that telling people to move south of the river makes the directions clear and understandable for everybody, regardless of if they have a map or not, because obviously they know where the river is. Conrica said that the evacuation order is for safety purposes, adding that civilians will not be able to return to Gaza City until another announcement clearing the area is made. He also said not to approach the area of the security fence with Israel. Hamas operates out of Gaza City in tunnels underneath homes and inside buildings populated with innocent civilians in the efforts to use them as human shields. I believe we talked about that earlier today in the chat. The IDF said that it will continue to operate significantly in Gaza City and make extended efforts to avoid harming civilians, which is a luxury that they were not afforded. So, what I get from this is Israel makes an announcement to the people of Gaza: if you don't want to get smoked, take your ass across the river. If you're on this side of the river in 24 hours, we will kill you because you didn't heed our warning.
Pretty much.
Is that a fair assessment?
Yep.
Okay. So that was like your last chance to save yourselves. He didn't have to do that. I mean, in response, he could have just wiped out the entire area if he wanted to, and it would solve his problems temporarily. The rest of the world around him, the rest of the Muslim world around him, might continue attacking him, but his immediate threat in front of him would be gone. He didn't do that. He gave even the enemy a chance to cross the river so they could fight another day and make this bullshit happen again who knows when. I don't know how I feel about this warning, but it's a humanitarian gesture, so it doesn't make him look like he's smashing an iron fist into them constantly. Whatever. I just wanted to look at the tank a little longer. Moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, now we have, well, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin landed in Tel Aviv, Israel, Friday at around 9:41 a.m. local time, which would have been a little after midnight my time, to meet in person with Israeli leaders following the terrorist attacks launched on the country by Hamas on Saturday. Austin is expected to meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant, and the Israeli War Cabinet during the visit aimed at showing America's unwavering support for the Israeli people and ensuring Israel has what it needs to defend himself, according to a DoD news release. He's also expected to view some of the security assistance delivered to Israel from the U.S. Friday's visit marks Austin's second trip to Israel this year, and his third since becoming Secretary of Defense. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is also in the region and is scheduled to meet separately with the Jordanian King Abdullah II and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in Amman, Jordan, Friday morning. I don't have an update on either of those two meetings, just so you know.
No?
No, I didn't have time. Moving on. I titled this bullshit. Hamas claims the Israeli military's retaliatory strikes on the Gaza Strip have killed 13 hostages, including foreigners taken captive by their group. Hamas's military wing said in a statement Friday that the 13 killed in various locations over the past 24 hours. It did not give the nationalities of the foreigners. There's been no confirmation with Israel. Israeli officials have said that as many as 150 hostages were taken by Hamas terrorists in the deadly surprise attack on Israel Saturday that claimed the lives of more than 1,300 of its civilians. It is unknown how many hostages were Americans, but the White House said Wednesday it's probably a very small number. Secretary of State Antony Blinken confirmed Thursday night that 27 Americans have been killed in the ensuing war between Israel and Hamas. A Hamas spokesman threatened Monday that the group would kill one hostage for every unannounced Israeli airstrike that hit civilian homes in Gaza. Hamas is known to hide in tunnels under civilian structures, using the people of Gaza as human shields against Israelis' wrath. Well, yeah, cowards do that. Moving on. Sirens blared in Ashkelon Friday as a barrage of rocket fire from Gaza headed towards the Israeli city. Hamas terrorists in a statement claimed to have launched 150 rockets at Ashkelon, putting an end to roughly 14 hours, during which almost no rockets were fired. Israeli Defense Forces say that over 6,000 rockets have been fired at Israel from Gaza since Hamas launched a surprise attack on the country last Saturday. The rockets have targeted residential areas, and thousands of Israeli civilians have been wounded by attacks that have slipped past Israel's Iron Dome defense system. I wouldn't call it slipped, I would call it overwhelmed it by sheer volume, which is why CRAM would have been useful. Israel has responded with punishing airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, which Palestinian authorities say have wounded some 1,500 of them. Hamas is known to place military targets behind and under human civilian shields. As of Thursday night, more than 2,800 Israelis and Palestinians have been killed, and at least 9,800 have been wounded since Hamas launched its attack on Israel on Saturday. The death toll is expected to rise as Israeli forces reportedly prepared for its ground invasion of Gaza. This has been going on for 6 days. And if you've been paying attention to the numbers I've been reading off to you, this has accelerated, the casualty numbers have accelerated faster than the first 6 days of what happened in Ukraine. That is staggering. Because if you think about the size of Ukraine versus the size of Israel, it's the population density, the casualties in that population density must just be staggering. Like piles of bodies in comparison, right? This is accelerating at a rate faster than it did in Ukraine. And that was much bigger nations attacking each other, or attacking and defending. That's how serious this is. Moving on. All right, here we go. Now, this is how you know your government does not have your best interest in mind. Hamas has instructed Palestinian citizens to ignore the Israeli Defense Forces' warnings to evacuate areas targeted for airstrikes. You know why?
Tragedy.
Well, no. If they leave, Hamas has no human shields to hide behind. Of course they're going to tell you to ignore it. No, you need to stay here. We need you to stand in front of us.
Yep.
A diplomatic source told Fox News' Trey Yingst, we've been watching him on and off for several days, that Hamas is preventing Palestinians from evacuating IDF targets. During a live report Friday morning, Yingst said a senior official with a terrorist group told him evacuation is technically impossible. He has been going back and forth on both sides of this conflict, interviewing Palestinian leaders and Israeli leaders, and they let him. That's crazy. In a statement, the Hamas Authority for Refugee Affairs called on Palestinians to, quote, remain steadfast in your homes and stand firm in the face of this disgusting psychological war waged by the occupation, according to the Associated Press. Israel has warned the...
They would.
Well, yeah. Israel has warned the 1.1 million people living in the north of Gaza to evacuate the area within 24 hours as a humanitarian step in order to minimize civilian casualties, ahead of military's response to Hamas's terrorist attacks. Actually, it's more like, no, we just want the human shields to get away. IDF spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, in a press conference, said that Hamas is responsible for any harm that comes to civilians who do not evacuate from the northern part of the Gaza Strip, the Times of Israel has reported. Hamas is taking advantage of the residents of the Gaza Strip, bringing disaster upon them, and calling on the residents of the Gaza Strip at this time as well not to listen to the IDF's recommendations, Hagari says. The responsibility for what may happen to those who do not evacuate will be on Hamas's head, not his. They're going to kill him. You didn't get out, you're going to die. Basically, he's like, that's a you problem now. We gave you 24 hours to get the hell out. It's only a 29-mile strip. You can't say you couldn't get out 29 miles in 24 hours. Even on foot, you can do that. Anyway, moving on. So I left a side note here, and it says a few days ago that the EU threatened Elon Musk to do something about false information about Palestine and Hamas on their social media network X. So what did they do? What did they do?
What did they do?
Well, this is what they did. Social media platform X has worked to remove hundreds of accounts linked to terrorist group Hamas, according to the company's new CEO. Linda Yaccarino remarked on the anti-terrorism efforts in a Thursday letter released publicly to an EU official, so she capitulated to their demands. So far, since the start of the conflict, X has identified and removed hundreds of Hamas-affiliated accounts from the platform, Yaccarino says. The letter was published to X and addressed to European Commissioner for International Market Thierry Breton, who previously warned misinformation flooding the platform could be in violation of the bloc's Digital Service Act amid recent changes from the platform allowing sensitive and graphic media. So far since the start of the conflict, X has identified and removed hundreds of Hamas-affiliated accounts from their platform. Following the terrorist attacks carried out by Hamas against Israel, we have indications that your platform is being used to disseminate illegal content and disinformation in the EU, Breton wrote in the open letter to Elon Musk. Let me remind you that the Digital Service Act sets very precise obligations regarding content moderation. In her letter, Yaccarino went on to state that X is proportionately and effectively assessing and addressing identified, fake, and manipulated content during this constantly evolving and shifting crisis. There is no place on X for terrorist organizations or violent extremist groups, and we continue to remove such accounts in real time, including proactive efforts. If the X thing is annoying, I'm sorry. I just do it because it's funny. Moving on. See? Short stories. So this was the prelude to the invasion. The Israeli Defense Force said that it had hit 750 military targets Thursday night in response to the attacks launched on the country last weekend. Dozens of fighter jets struck Hamas military targets in the Gaza Strip, including 12 Hamas military assets located in a multi-story building used by the group for terror purposes, according to the IDF. The targets include underground Hamas terror tunnels, military compounds and posts, residences of senior terrorist operatives used as military command centers, weapons storage warehouses, communications rooms, and targeted senior terrorist operatives. In addition to the airstrikes, the IDF said soldiers from a special unit targeted 3 Hamas operatives that specialized in mortar fire at a military command center in Gaza City. The overnight attacks into Friday morning come a day after Israel launched a wave of strikes that killed a senior Hamas leader and destroyed operational command centers in Gaza, the IDF reported Thursday. One of the airstrikes executed Thursday killed Mohammed Abu Shamla, a senior Hamas naval operative in the Rafah Brigade, while others struck operational command centers used by Hamas operatives, where the infiltration into Israeli communities surrounding Gaza on Saturday was originally organized. The IDF aircraft struck Mohammed Abu Shamla senior Hamas naval operative in the Rafah Brigade. Didn't I just say that?
Mhm.
They repeated it. Abu Shamla's residence was used to store naval weapons designated for terror against the state of Israel, the IDF said in their statement. They repeated it. I just read it back. I thought we gave Israel F-16s long ago. We did.
They've made good use of them too.
They've made very good use of them.
They've upgraded them to be way better than ours.
Yes. It's what they do. If
They
you
take
look
our
at the
shit
first
better, yes.
Merkava tank and squint really hard, you will see the ultimate evolution of what an M60 Patton tank would have been. They just take things that we give them and make them better because they just use them. And they figure out how to make them work better for their regional needs. And it turns out better than our original design because we design these things for certain types of warfare. I mean, if you think about it, like the M60 Patton tank, right? It came after the end of World War II. It was for the beginning of the Cold War. It was meant for like urban and forest and stuff like that because it was across Eastern Europe. And then it maybe would have made it to Korea, but they took M26 Pershings instead. Well, then take these things that were made for that kind of terrain and send it to Israel. That is nothing like any of those places.
Well, I don't think you could really say the Merkava is a outshoot of the M60.
Well, no, it's an evolution. Like they took the M60, they modified it many, many times, and then the lessons they learned from that led to the design of the Merkava. The
Yeah,
one,
because
not the
the
four.
engine's in the front on a Merkava.
Yeah.
None of our tanks have ever had the engine in the front.
Sherman's. No, you're right. The transaxles were in the front. Okay, fair enough. Like the transmissions and the gearboxes were in the front, the engines were in the back. You're right.
Yes, because the drive sprockets were in the front.
Yeah. And if you shot a Sherman in the front and the transmission exploded, it killed the driver not from shrapnel, well, probably from shrapnel, from the gears, and also the very, very scalding hot fluid in his face. Anyway, moving on. We'll talk about the Swiss cheese known as the M4 Sherman in another video someday. All right, this guy, doesn't he just look like a man on a peace mission? No. I'll tell you who he is. Iran's foreign minister said hostile parties may join the war against Israel if the bombardment of Gaza continues. During a visit to Beirut, Hossein, oh my God, let me try to pronounce this, Hossein Amiradalian, well, that's not so bad, accused Israel of war crimes against Palestinian civilians and demanded an immediate end to Israel's retaliatory attacks after Hamas terrorists massacred more than 1,300 Israelis in a surprise attack. United States President Joe Biden was warned Middle East nations to stay out, or has warned Middle East nations to stay out of the Israeli-Hamas conflict, sending American warships to the region and pledging full support for Israel. What is funny is that at a time when America is calling on parties for self-restraint, it is allowing the criminals in the fake Zionist entity to kill women, children, and civilians in Gaza, Amir Abdalian has said, according to the Associated Press. Time out, fucker. The Palestinians did it first, last Saturday. Had you not paid attention to the news?
They started this whole conflict.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You reap the wind, now you sow the whirlwind. Right? Is that what
That's
what Bomber Harris said?
Are you Polish?
No, that was Schumer.
No, I was talking about Arthur Harris, Bomber Harris.
Yeah, and you got that reversed.
What do you mean? You reap the wind, now you sow the whirlwind, or something like that. Sorry, I tried to remember that quote before I said it, but I screwed it up slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Or now you'll get the whirlwind. Right. Anyway. Let's see. He warned that if the organized war crimes that are committed by the Zionist entity don't stop immediately, then we can imagine any possibility. He did not elaborate, but it was an apparent hint that Iranian-backed groups could join the war, as if they're not already. Senior Hamas official Ali Baraka told the Associated Press this week in Beirut that allies like Iran and the Lebanese Hezbollah will join the battle if Gaza is subjected to a war of annihilation. Amir Abdalian said America cannot send weapons and bombs to kill women, children, and civilians in Gaza at the same time calls on all sides for self-restraint. You're sending drones to Ukraine for the Russians to use. I don't want to hear it from you. Period. Exclamation point.
Especially since Iran's already actually acknowledged that they were involved in planning it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe somebody should show him that video, because this guy's not very well informed.
Mm-hmm.
The bearded guy asked...
Especially when the head of the Iranian government has admitted it.
Yeah. The bearded guy is asking, is Iran nuclear? Soon. Soon. Because we're idiots, and this nuclear deal that our government keeps trying to make us believe is happening has been the biggest dog and pony show in nuclear weapons history.
If anybody
hold on. I've got a response for that.
Go ahead.
Bullshit.
Right. Yeah. They'll be nuclear soon. And then once Genie's out of the fucking bottle, there's nothing we can do about it. That's the problem. That's why we don't want them to have a weapon. Because every time a new nation becomes a nuclear power, they have just equalized themselves on the geopolitical stage. Do you want the Iranians to be equal at the geopolitical stage when they're this unhinged? No. Clearly no. But we keep doing this nuclear deal, and then they're like, okay, we'll take the deal. You just have to tell us when you're going to do your inspections. And then we're like, okay, we're going to do this inspection on this day. We're going to go to this place. So they take everything out of that place and move it somewhere else. And then when you come to this place, it's empty.
To use the old adage, if you believe the Iranians are going to abide by the nuclear deal, I have a bridge to sell you.
Yeah, I'll sell you some beachfront property in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see. Oof, okay, so I asked a question in here. I'm not sure if this is part of this. Oh, yeah, so I was like, does this not truly end until Iran is dealt with once and for all? Haven't they been the agitator of this entire region now for over 40 years? Think about the answer to that. Think of the Iranian-American hostage crisis and every single thing that they have done since then. If it wasn't for Iran, we would have never been involved with Iraq, right? Or Kuwait, or Israel, any of this. It's always been Iran. It's like, it's Toretto, Brian. It always has been. It's the same thing. It's Iran, Brian. It always has been. This doesn't end until Tehran doesn't exist. Or at least the leadership. I should say the leadership. Because I still believe that the youth of Iran really don't want what they have as leadership. They always have an uprising, and I always get a little hopeful that they finally overthrow, and then they get crushed by their own military, and then they're brought to heel, and that sucks. Like, I really hate that. Because if they really wanted to be free, God, they just need to succeed.
They need plane loads of Liberator pistols.
In the form of PSA daggers. Let's give them a fighting chance. More than
there you go.
Shot. Yeah. Let's just drop like, oh, I mean, why don't we just airdrop 3D printers and just give them the what do they call them, CSL files or whatever?
They are using those in Ukraine.
Yeah, let's just do that. Let's just give them that, or let's just drop like 10,000 polymer 80s.
So the problem is the Myanmar rebels are using 3D printers to make guns, and it's not working out so great for them.
Well,
Actually, I've seen them been pretty successful with a couple different models.
Yeah, but
They're not meant to last regular
yeah,
traditionally made gun though.
right. Like
no,
the Liberator pistol, right? The concept behind that was small, portable, use it the one time to kill the guy in front of you so you can
And take their gun.
take their gun. Exactly. It's the gun to get you to your next gun. That's all it is. You know, when we used to be like gun channels aficionados and we used to do the live chats and the what ifs and the never enough ammo type chats of what if this and the top 10 this and all this other stuff, right? Some of us have some pretty extensive firearms collections. Most of us, well, all of us in this panel do, and a lot of you that are watching do. And there was a question that came up. If the world went to shit and you had to go through all the guns you have in your place, what would you take? Because you can't take them all. I mean, let's be realistic. You cannot, well, I can't. My collection's too big. Some of you guys have more safes than Fort Knox full of guns. You can't take all that with you. Are you going to just hunker down? Because, you know, fixed fortifications are monuments to the stupidity of mankind. You might be able to dig in for a little while, but once everyone realizes, hey, that guy's got all the guns and ammo, we should go take over that. Then 1,000 people raid you, and then each one of those guys takes something out of your place. But for you, Joe Q Public, what do you take out of your collection? Well, some people would grab one gun out of their collection that would guarantee that it could get them to the next gun they're going to need beyond the one that they're carrying. That's what the Liberator pistol was for resistance fighters. Small, one-shot, 45 ACP. It probably was going to bend or warp or break, but that one shot would kill the guy in front of you, and then you take his gun.
the 1911.
Yeah, well, if you had a Liberator pistol, you probably killed a guy that was holding an MP40.
Yeah, probably.
So now you have an MP40. Now you're like, ho, 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 now I have a submachine gun. Man, we're just like full of quotes tonight. Like even Patrick, he's like, you called down the thunder, well now you've got it.
And then didn't realize he deleted it.
Yeah. Well done, sir.
Well, you know, Sean, I'm here to chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of gum.
That movie. God. That was bad. But you know what? We here in the panel, we watched The Exterminator and the sequel.
Sean didn't even know there was a sequel. He's like, they made a second one?
That was a lot of cheese.
Actually, I like the second one better than the first one, honestly.
Yeah, because there was more boobs in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, moving on. I'm gonna show you a blast from the past. You remember this guy?
All right. No, I don't remember him.
He fought.
Remind me who he is.
He fought Tear. He walked with his arms out to make him look bigger than he was.
He fought Tear?
We fought Tear. He said Tear. Terrorists. Terror. He fought Tear.
Oh my God, he fought Terror.
Former President George W. Bush, in his first comments on the Israeli-Hamas war, said with absolute certainty that only one side is to blame for this conflict. Quote, my view is one side is guilty, and it's not Israel. Bush said this Tuesday at a private event near Santa Barbara, California. Video of his on-stage conversation with presidential historian Mark Updegrove, president and CEO of the LBJ Foundation, was first reported by Axios. During the conversation, Bush described himself as a hardliner on terrorism and predicted the Israeli offensive in Gaza is, quote, going to be ugly for a while. It's not going to take long for people to say, this has gone on too long. Surely there's a way to settle this through negotiations. Both sides are guilty, Bush said. But he was clear that Hamas are the cold-blooded killers. You can make all kinds of excuses why they are, but they are, he says, adding that negotiate with the killers is not an option for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. His job is to protect his country. And anyway, we'll find out what he's really made of. Bush was president when Israel invaded Gaza back in 2008 during a war in which thousands of Palestinians died.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but did they start that one too, or did Palestinians start that one? Usually,
I think was Arafat still alive then?
I don't know. You'll have to look that up.
I'll look that up later. But either way, you know, I'm pretty sure, you know, the Palestinians started that one too.
It just seems like it's a pattern.
It does.
You start something, there's going to be something, that kind of thing. So now you're making me look this up because you didn't do it yourself.
No, he died in 2004.
Okay, so that happened before, or that happened 4 years later.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said Friday that the deliberate cruelty of Hamas vividly reminds me of ISIS. Speaking at a joint press conference with his Israeli counterpart Yoav Gallant, Austin reiterated that American support for Israel is ironclad. He condemned those who refuse to acknowledge the atrocities committed by Hamas. There is no time for neutrality, or for false equivalence, or the excusing of the inexcusable, Austin says. There is never any justification for terrorism, and that's especially true after this rampage by Hamas. And anyone who wants lasting peace for this region must condemn and isolate them. He continued, Hamas does not speak for the Palestinian people or their legitimate hopes for dignity, security, and statehood, and peace alongside Israel. A former commander of Central Command, the deliberate cruelty of Hamas vividly reminds me of ISIS, bloodthirsty, fanatical, and hateful. And just like ISIS, Hamas has nothing to offer but zealotry, bigotry, and certain death. Austin pledged that the United States would continue to ensure Israel has what it needs to defend itself. At President Biden's direction, we have moved urgently to respond to this crisis and to send a strong message of deterrence. The USS Gerald Ford Carrier Strike Group is now in the region, led by the largest aircraft carrier in the world. He added that the U.S. fighter aircraft squadrons are standing in the Middle East to respond if needed.
Yep.
Sorry, frog in my throat. So anyway, that was his joint press conference today, which he flew very early in the morning to get to. Hang on. Give me just a sec. All right, there we go. Tea break. You said
Well, you are Asian.
Right? Well, you said we needed a break somewhere in the middle.
We do. Honestly.
So I took a break to hack up a lung. All right, so Fridays are usually known as the Muslims' Day of Prayer. However, Hamas had a different name for it today. Security around the world has been ramped up on Friday as Israeli authorities are warning the public about Hamas's call for a day of rage, targeting its people and Jews all over the world. The Israeli National Security Council and Ministry of Foreign Affairs says that it's recommending all Israelis abroad to be alert, keep away from the demonstrations and protests, and if necessary, check with local security forces regarding possible protests and disturbances in the area. Damn it. I think I have a hair in my throat or something. Against the background of Operation Swords of Iron, the Hamas leadership has called on all of its supporters around the world to hold a day of rage. Friday, 13 October 2023, today. and attack Israelis and Jews. The agency said in a joint statement, "It is reasonable to assume that there will be protest events in various countries that are liable to turn violent." Mhm. The National Security
Protesting is
Council.
fine. Violence is not.
Well, with these guys, protesting always leads to violence. They're instigators of it.
Yeah.
The National Security Council, the Security Services, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs will continue to act everywhere in order to safeguard the security of Israeli citizens around the world, the statement added. The FBI was also quoted as saying that it is aware of calls for global action on Friday, October 13th, that may lead to demonstrations in communities throughout the United States. We're working closely with our law enforcement partners across the country to share information and identify and damn it, and disrupt any threats that may emerge. As always, we take seriously any tips or leads we receive regarding potential threats and investigate them vigorously to determine their credibility, the FBI says. The FBI encourages members of the public to remain vigilant and to report anything they consider suspicious to law enforcement.
I'd argue everything is suspicious over there right now.
I think I just got that piece out. Anyway. On Wednesday, former Hamas leader Khaled Mashal called for a protest in support of the Palestinians. "We must head to the squares and streets of the Arab and Islamic world on Friday," Reuters quoted him as saying in a recorded statement. I feel like I swallowed a cat. All right, moving on. Here we go. And these are the figures for today. Some of you may recognize that I used to do these facts and figures for the Ukrainian conflict. Al Jazeera decided that the Kyiv Independent shouldn't be the only one cornering that market, so now they provide the latest casualty statistics in the Israeli-Gaza conflict.
Well, and believe it or not, Al Jazeera is a little bit skewed on which side they're on, so be aware of that.
Well, yeah, because they're based in Doha, which is in Qatar, and they're pro-Palestinian. So, here's the funny part, though. Almost everybody in the Doha office is a British national. They're Qatari citizens, but they're British nationals too. They were educated formally in England. They all have accents, British accents. Go figure. Anyway, here's the figures. The story reads as follows. Palestinian authorities said Friday that at least 1,799 Palestinians are dead and more than 6,300 wounded. Now, that number's changed, obviously, as you can see there. On the West Bank, the Palestinian Ministry of Health reports 44 died and more than 700 were injured in ongoing violence. Of those injured, 250 have reached hospitals. On the Israeli side, more than 1,300 civilians were killed by Hamas terrorists, and upwards of 3,200 were injured. Israel has issued an evacuation order for the 1.1 million people living in the northern part of the Gaza Strip as a humanitarian step in order to minimize civilian casualties ahead of a feared ground invasion of Gaza. The IDF calls for the evacuation of all civilians from Gaza City from their homes southwards for their own safety and protection, and to move the area south of Wadi Gaza, the river, as shown on their map. That's a little repeat. He explained that telling people to move south of the river makes the directions clear and understandable, whether or not they have a map. Pwnery said the evacuation order is strictly for safety purposes, adding that civilians will not be able to return to Gaza until the all-clear has been given. He also said not to approach the area of any security fences near the Israeli border. Basically, you'll be shot if you do. Okay, so at the time I wrote this...
Surprise, surprise, they'll be shot.
Yeah. Well, at the time I wrote this, I'm going to have to edit this now. 8 hours ago, the offensive actually began. So, Trey Yingst, who is Fox's combat correspondent, was pretty much sent on location during this invasion. IDF tells Trey Yingst that Israeli forces entered the Gaza Strip Friday, both infantry forces and tank battalions, to conduct localized raids. The Israeli military said that the raids were an effort to eliminate militants along the border and to gather information about those held hostage inside the Gaza Strip. This was not the highly anticipated full-scale invasion Israel has been preparing, but it marks the first time Israeli forces entered Gaza on the ground since the start of this war on Saturday. More than 1,300 Israelis were killed, and thousands more were wounded when Hamas launched a surprise terror attack on the Jewish state last Saturday. As many as 150 people are believed to have been taken captive by terrorists and are being held in Gaza. Israel has called up some 360,000 military reservists, Amit being one of them, to respond to the Hamas-led terror campaign. Those forces,
Poor Amit.
yeah, no. Those forces have gathered on Israel's border with Gaza ahead of a possible full-scale invasion to reclaim the hostages and eliminate Hamas terrorists. Israel has warned the 1.1 million people living north of Gaza that they had 24 hours to evacuate. Funny story, not funny, but a story about Amit. He lives in the town of Haifa. It's on the coast in the north. It's pretty close to the Lebanese border. When he was called up, I think the first thing they did was they sent him to the Lebanese border. So, took a couple of selfies there. As a reservist, he's not getting the latest and greatest kit. A couple of us commented that some of the stuff is pretty dated, but it's better than nothing. And then we noted that it would be rather embarrassing to be killed by a guy with that goofy looking smile on his face, because he took the whole thing tongue-in-cheek and in stride. In the middle of what is absolute chaos, he could still take the time to laugh. That was 3 days ago. Since then, rockets have come across the border from Lebanon into his town of Haifa, where his wife and daughter are. I don't think he's smiling as much as he did 3 days ago, because now he's got a reason to be angry.
He's wishing he had his tank.
Which he doesn't have. I'm sure they'll find him one. Or an APC or something.
Maybe they'll give him a Merkava.
Well, I don't think they could train him up on it in time.
No, but they could put him in one of their APCs that's based on the Merkava.
Yeah.
I mean, do they really need to train him to tell him to go forward, backwards?
Was he a
and
driver
right?
or commander?
He was a driver. I'm sure.
If he was
I'm
a
sure
driver,
he could.
I'm sure the controls are different.
I'm sure he could drive a Merkava. Easy.
Just put it in H.
Just put it in age. You'll be fine.
Oh man. All right, moving on before I choke on fur in my throat or whatever. Here's where things get interesting, because I left this note. Then it became a two-front war. The Lebanese terrorist group, Hezbollah, has claimed responsibility for attacks on Israeli military posts along the border with Lebanon on Friday. Remember I was saying that they attacked Haifa? Here's the fucker that did it. The Islamist group said in a statement they targeted the military post with small arms fire. The Israeli military responded with tank and artillery fire toward the source of the attacks. A group of journalists covering clashes on the border was struck by an Israeli shell that killed one and left 6 others injured, the AP reported. Qatari media outlet Al Jazeera TV said 2 of its employees, Eli Brakia and reporter Carmen Jakuder, were wounded. Others wounded and killed were not yet identified by their respective outlets. The Lebanon-Israel border has been witnessing sporadic acts of violence since Saturday's attack by the terrorist Palestinian group Hamas on southern Israel. Journalists from around the world have been coming to Lebanon out of concern that war might break out between Hezbollah and Israel. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Hezbollah answers to Iran, don't they? Not Lebanon. Or is it Hamas that
No,
answers
no,
to
no,
Iran?
no.
One
See,
of them does.
see, Hezbollah is part, or they're based out of Lebanon. Period. They've always been there.
Okay.
Hamas, I think, has always been associated with Palestinians.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with Hamas is they haven't just taken just Palestinians. They've taken whoever wants to join from the Middle East.
Right, and
That's the problem with Hamas.
that's the thing that Amit was showing us that the news is not showing us.
Actually, the news was showing it earlier. I did post a thing further
the
up
ISIS
earlier in the
flags?
week. Yeah, apparently Israel has basically declared Hamas part of ISIS and ISIL.
Right, and even Netanyahu, he was like, Hamas is ISIS, and even our friend Amit, he shared 2 different after battle photos of equipment seized and flags that were found on the bodies of these soldiers that are part of Hamas, and both times he had ISIS flags. Both times they found them.
Yeah, so the remnants of ISIS and ISIL joined Hamas and started this shit.
I think it's just they're all the same thing.
They might be. They're though my personal opinion, they're all assholes, and I have no I do not weep a single tear for anyone who would execute babies. Period.
Yeah. Agreed.
Because the child is innocent. It hasn't been given a choice to do this, that, or the other.
It hadn't even
And
had time to be taught hate yet.
Yes. It hadn't even had time to decide which side it was on. But executing a baby like that, a child? No. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yep. Moving on.
Sorry, that was a strike rant.
It's fine. By the way, that first story was the part of the 5-story warning. So we're almost done. I promise.
Yeah.
Reuters confirmed Friday that a crew member covering the growing conflict between Israel and Lebanese terrorists on its northern border was killed. We're deeply saddened to learn that our videographer, Issam Abdallah, has been killed, the news agency said in a statement. Issam was part of the Reuters crew in southern Lebanon who was providing a live signal. Reuters said that it is working with authorities in the region to obtain more information on the strike, spelled with an I, that killed Abdallah to support his family and colleagues.
Yeah, none of the strikes in the Israel-Palestinian conflict right now is a strike with a Y.
Correct.
Not unless they come from a U.S. carrier.
Which hasn't happened yet.
Allegedly, considering there's 2 there now.
Oh, no. The other one's still in the Atlantic.
It's on its way.
Reuters journalists Tahir al-Sudani and Maher Nazeh were also injured and are seeking medical care, Reuters says. The Associated Press reported Friday that an Israeli shell landed in a gathering of international journalists covering clashes on Israel's border with Lebanon. 1 was killed and 6 more were injured in collateral damage. The terrorist group Hezbollah said that it targeted Israeli military posts on the border Friday as Israel wages war against the Palestinian terror group Hamas to its south. Israeli Defense Forces said that they retaliated with tank and artillery fire towards fire from Lebanon. Well, yeah, it's kind of what you do. Collateral damage, though. That is a risk every combat journalist takes. It happened to Benjamin Hall from Fox News in Ukraine. It cost them an eye, a hand, and a foot. This is... They risk their lives to cover this, and sometimes they will die. And it's not out of malice, like that, for instance. Israel didn't shell aiming at the press corps. Israel aimed in a direction that fire came from in response, and the press corps just happened to be at that particular spot. It sucks, but that's war. War sucks. And that's what it is. Moving on. Then there's the UN. And this is kind of annoying to me. As Israel reels from the deadliest terror attack in years by Hamas, the United Nations Security Council still does not recognize or sanction Hamas as a terror group, despite multiple other nations declaring it to be so. The UN Security Council votes to impose sanctions and designations on groups like Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or ISIS. But no such sanctions or designations exist for Iran's axis of terror groups, including Hamas and Hezbollah. This came from Richard Goldberg, senior advisor at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. The Council, under resolutions passed in 1999, 2011, and 2015, sanctions ISIS and Al-Qaeda, along with associated individuals and groups. The Council's Committee on those resolutions oversees sanctions imposed by the Council. However, there are no such sanctions in place for Hamas and Hezbollah. The lack of sanctioning comes as Israel is pushing back against Hamas after it was hit by a surprise attack that killed more than 1,300 Israelis. The UN insists these are legitimate political movements and therefore can freely work with them, said Goldberg, who previously served as director for countering weapons of destruction at the White House National Security Council between 2019 and 2020. Israeli and U.S. officials have criticized the UN, including the Security Council, which is made up of 15 members, including permanent membership for the U.S., UK, France, China, and Russia, for allegedly having an anti-Israeli bias. Anti-Israeli bias. I'm trying to read too far ahead.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. The U.S., under former President Trump, introduced a resolution in 2018 to label Hamas as a terror group, but it received only one vote in favor, that of the United States. Russia and its veto power often form a roadblock on the Council for any action against Tehran and Iran-backed entities. The Associated Press reported this week that the U.S. demanded the Council condemn these heinous terrorist attacks committed by Hamas, but no immediate action has been taken. Why not? Well, as if the insanity didn't stop. We talked about protests all over the world by people who left the two countries that are in this conflict that will argue with each other, coming to blows and fighting each other in their new country about the ones that they left behind. And we said that they're idiots. It gets worse. It gets a lot worse. For instance, this. An Israeli embassy employee was stabbed outside of his workplace in China today, according to Chinese and Israeli authorities. The 50-year-old man, described as a family member of an Israeli diplomat, was attacked upon exiting the Beijing embassy. The employee was transferred to a hospital, and he appears to be in stable condition. Beijing police have arrested a suspect in the stabbing, whom they described as a 53-year-old foreigner. China has been tepid in taking sides following the Hamas-led terror attacks on Israel. Maybe because they're busy dealing with their little conflict that they want to create with Taiwan. Just a thought. Israeli officials complained that there was no clear and unequivocal condemnation of the terrible massacre committed by the terrorist organization Hamas against civilians and abduction of dozens of them to Gaza. The Israeli statement continued, the Chinese announcements do not contain any element of Israel's right to defend itself or its citizens, a fundamental right of any sovereign country that was attacked in an unprecedented manner and with cruelty that has no place in human society. China gave little ground in response to Israel's complaints, offering a simple reaffirmation towards de-escalation and peace in the region. China will continue to work unremittingly for de-escalation of the situation and the resumption of peace talks, said Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin. I don't need Winnie the Pooh telling me to de-escalate.
But remember, we're not supposed to call him that anymore.
Says who?
Says him.
Too bad. I got the patch. So do you.
I've got two of them.
So does Scott.
So
we all got the scramble patch.
Though I will say this, I got mine before you both got yours.
Yes. Although I think when I reach 1,000 subs, which at the rate things are going, should probably be just before Thanksgiving, I might give away one of those patches. I haven't figured out how I'm going to do it, but, whatever. I do have one, though. Actually, I have a couple of really neat patches lately I've been getting. Moving on. And I believe it is the last story I have for you for today, unless you want to add something later.
Maybe.
So... Oh, yeah, I broke in with that thing about the U.S. State Department said that the first flight carrying citizens from Israel has indeed landed in Athens. So, just before we went on air, I found that.
Yeah, okay, good.
All right, so my last story is what I think I led off with. And I'm going to start with this photo, because I think it's pretty damn appropriate. The White House had an unclassified briefing with members of Congress this week about potentially adding aid to Israel in a package with Ukraine, according to sources similar or familiar with the negotiations. Senior officials in the administration briefed the upper chamber on a phone call that it would like to see a mega package of aid to both nations and for Taiwan, border security, and a non-profit security program to protect houses of worship, like synagogues, mosques, and churches. But the Senate is currently out on recess until next week, and the House is frozen without a leader after it voted to oust Kevin McCarthy, House Speaker, last week. Negotiations in the upper chamber are more likely to go public next week since the temporary spending patch for the government expires November 17th. The current spending deal does not include any additional assistance to Ukraine. While talks behind closed doors began this week, the Biden administration has not publicly asked Congress for a funding package for Israel, which would mainly replenish its weaponry and strengthen its Iron Dome defense. The administration did not put a figure on the supplemental package that the White House is seeking. I'm pretty sure it's going to start with a B. Most sources familiar with the talks said congressional members brought up what Israel might need and asked the administration their plans. The administration outlined 3 areas for Israeli military support: precision-guided munitions, artillery, and air defense, also known as the Iron Dome. Gee, that sounds like what Vladimir Zelensky's been asking for 2 years. According to another GOP aide, there's more bipartisan support for aid to Israel in both chambers compared to those who are supportive of sending more aid to the European nation. Ukraine has already received upward of $100 billion from the federal government to aid in its defense against the Russian invasion that began in February of 22. The difference between the two regions, one GOP aide said, is that Ukraine needs much more support on a ground zero scale, whereas Israel is already an established nation that will likely need much smaller funding amounts to support its fight against Hamas. So, that's all I've got for you, which is good.
Because you're falling down fast.
Because I swallowed a goddamn cat today. So unless you got something you want to add.
No, we pretty much covered everything.
Excellent.
Other than you know, maybe a thought or something for Amit.
Well, yeah, I think 2 or 3 times tonight we probably mentioned that.
Yeah.
Our boy Amit fighting for Israel in the north. You know, I didn't mention this in either episode. If you want to help in any way for these people, there is a link that has been scrolling across the bottom of the screen for the International Red Cross. Use it. Because the things that these people need, and I'm going to be fair. I will be fair, okay? There are Palestinian people who are not Hezbollah. There are Palestinian people who live in the Gaza Strip.
Not Hamas.
That are not Hamas. They were granted a work visa. They work in Israel. They go home to the Gaza Strip. They raise families. They go about their business. I have to believe that there are people on both sides that are just trying to get through the day. Because we live in a country of about 366 million people, and that's all we're trying to do. Except we hash out our differences a little bit more civilly in this instance than they are. So,
well, unless you live in Kenosha or, you know.
Both sides need beans, bullets, and antibiotics.
Yeah.
We tend to say that the Israelis need the bullets more. Because they're the ones who got screwed with, and they're not going to take this sitting down. If you're a Palestinian, if you're living in the Gaza Strip, I really hope you heeded the warnings and got the hell out of there. It's like fighting over a scrap of land in a conflict where you're both fighting for something you've never physically seen ever in your life. To an atheist like myself, just seems foolish. But that's your prerogative. It's just do it safely, because this is stupid. Seriously. The fight, that is. Anyway, before I choke to death, and I have tried to soldier on for the last 30 minutes, as you probably heard me hacking away.
Get something to drink.
Do you know why I'm coughing as bad as I have tonight? Have
You
You ran out of Postman's Friend?
No, I've been chewing on them one after another since I went on air. They're not working. The thing I didn't have was my freaking glass of old granddad that I sipped on to keep my throat numb the whole time. That's why I've been coughing. That's also why I haven't been slurring any of my words. So anyway, I'm gonna.
And why you haven't been an ass.
Night's not over yet, Mike.
Oh no, it's true. It's true.
This was the War Room Israeli Special, Episode 2. And if you like what you saw, hit the old like button. If you're not a member of my channel, hit the subscribe button too. That'd be cool. If you're new to my channel, welcome. But if you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, check out my other playlist and see if my other interests may be of interest to you. I've been saying that I'm going to be doing some gun videos and some tinkering videos. I got to work on the car tomorrow. I don't have time to film it. I'm sorry. But yes, there's new stuff coming. I promise. As soon as I can get through a video without hacking up half a lung. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I could still do Slava Ukraini. I didn't learn how to do it in Yiddish, but we'll see you next time.
Alright, I'm Slava. Shall not be infringed.
Say goodnight, Gracie.